All the Arsenal fans complaining about their injuries. Spurs have got a few as well, so let's just park that, okay? Last year, I think the biggest criticism that could be held of them was that they were a little bit predictable. How they crash the box is going to be key against Spurs. We'll see Declan Rice as that crashing that area into there to get into the box. This is a genuine, really good question for Arteta in this game.
Now that the international break is done and dusted, it's back to the bread and butter. Arsenal host Spurs in a huge North London derby this Sunday. The Gunners heading into the game top of the table, but their draw against Sunderland before the break has breathed life into this intriguing title race. Spurs are looking to get back to winning ways after dropping points in their last two Premier League games. And they'll be relying on their brilliant away form to get them over the line against their bitter rivals. Lots to get stuck into in this week's Tactical Exposed Team Talk. I'm Calafiori and I'm joined by the Sun's tactical guru, Dean Scoggins. Dino, you got us talking about Spurs yet again. How do you wrangle this?
Yeah, welcome back, Kwaku. Yeah, I didn't know whether it was worse having Will West Ham fan or Chelsea fan Kwaku winding me up ahead of the North London derby. But,
I'm not looking to wind you up this week, mate. I've got a lot of investment in this game and I'm looking for a Spurs victory. But it's been Jekyll and Hyde for Spurs home and away. Luckily, you're playing this game at the Emirates. Do you think that will come into play in this one?
No, I'm going to take my Spurs hat off completely here. The viewers know me. I'm completely down the line when it comes to tactics. I'm not looking to make predictions, but I think we could see some interesting tactical dynamics in this game. And we've got some good questions coming up, I think.
Well, that leads us into question number one. And the international break has brought a lot of questions for Arsenal. And this question relates to the injuries. How do Arsenal reshape their attack with their injuries?
Right, well, Tottenham hat back on just for 1 second, all right? All the Arsenal fans complaining about their injuries. Spurs have got a few as well. So, let's just park that, okay? And let's concentrate on this. So, yeah, Mikel Arteta, with the amazing squad that they've got, has now got the ability to keep teams guessing. And that last year, I think the biggest criticism that could be held of them was that they were a little bit predictable because they were very, very good, but you could still predict what they were going to do. So, whether Gyökeres is fit up here, whether it's Trossard or Martinelli or Eze who plays there, whether they get Odegaard back into the team, whether Noni Madueke is fit for the bench or to come from there, the shape that they put up will be similar. It's just that you've got different players, different things. And what we're going to look for, I think, in this is Arsenal bombing the box. So it's the Arsenal bomb squad. How they crash the box is going to be key against Spurs. And one of the things that unfortunately, I noticed quite a lot with the Tottenham defence is that they like to chase runners, okay? So Christian Romero, most likely to be here, or definitely will be here. Mickey van der Ven here. We'll come on to whether Spurs will play a back five in this game later on. But these two have a tendency to run after players. And so if it is Mikel Merino in here and Gyökeres isn't fit, what Arsenal will be looking to do is to drag defenders into places. So if Merino goes and parks himself on Romero there, he'll come into feet for the ball into this area and look to drag Christian Romero in there, which opens up this space here. And there we'll see Declan Rice as that crashing that area into there to get into the box. So let's assume that Tottenham line up with a very compact four, which could become a 5 or a 6 with Palhinha and Bentancur in there. They'll drop their wingers right in, whether that's Kudus one side, whether Javi Simons plays off the left, and then they'll have an extra midfielder come and drop in here. Patsar maybe, Bergvall maybe in that position. So then it becomes very, very congested straight away. And we'll see, obviously, Arsenal move into like a 3-2-5 or a 2-3-5 attacking shape, okay? So 3-2-5 as their shape going forward there. So how do you open up that space? They'll absolutely have one wide this side and they'll absolutely have one wide this side. But the key to it all is how they move these Tottenham fullbacks away from the defensive line so that they can get their box entries from these areas here. And Arsenal are top of the league, but not just top of the league for points, they're top of the league for getting players into the area. So the job for the front man, whether that is Gyökeres, Merino, they could play Trossard there as a false 9 if one of the other wingers is available, is to drag centre-backs either one way to create that space there for Rice and Trossard or Martinelli, or if Calafiori gets into that position, to crash the box and get those players in there. And if he drags a player the other side, that's where you might get Bukayo Saka Saka cutting in and shooting. Remember Romero's own goal in the North London derby a couple of years ago where Saka's come inside into that space, or you'll get Saka hold the line wide and you'll get Eberechi Eze crash into that area there. So that's the job, and that's where, regardless of who they have available or who they pick, the job against the Thomas Frank back four is to manipulate the fact that Romero and Van der Ven like to chase runners. So chase them out of position and crash the box.
So if you look at the Spurs midfield, which we assume is going to be pretty pragmatic, is it their duty to watch those runners who are bombing the box then? Because that is what Arsenal have done all season, and I'm sure that Thomas Frank is acutely aware of that.
Yeah, and I did a show last season where we talked a lot about Ange Postecoglou and that chaos that they created, and where Arteta set them up brilliantly at the Tottenham Stadium in the North London derby to stop that was to plug those gaps. So expect that if it is, let's say we have a midfield of Palhinha, Sarr and Bentancur, which is very, very possible, what can happen there is definitely have the tactic of trying to play 2v1 with the centre-backs against the striker, which means then the job of Bentancur is to slot and plug that gap there. And the job of Palhinha is to slot and plug that gap there. Now, that could make Tottenham almost like six at the back. And look, Frank will be okay with that if he can get Tottenham out going the other way. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The job of that midfielder, track those runners, because we know what Declan Rice does. He will start in this position here, and then he'll play. The ball will get played into this area, and then he's going to be the one that crashes into that box. So that's the danger with Arsenal at the moment. They are getting bodies into the area. They're getting the ball into the area. And, you know, that's where they have their danger. We all know Saka. We know what Saka's going to do. Whether you can stop it or not is another matter. But also the last couple of weeks, including his goal against Sunderland, the way that Trossard has dominated this area of the field, and whether that means that the left-back in Calafiori goes up the outside of him, which means Trossard can come inside and shoot, or Trossard's been absolutely fantastic at getting into that position there and playing a little cute pass round the corner, whether that is for Rice to bomb through that space or for the striker to run into that space. So they're going to be the things that Spurs are going to have to watch, but Arsenal are going to be trying to manipulate.
Could you also say that this box crashing has been facilitated by the fact that Bukayo Saka, who we all know is great at cutting on his left foot, is more than happy to go down the line and cross it in with his right foot as well now, which has maybe unlocked a huge kind of aspect of this Arsenal tactical formation.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, you're absolutely bang on. But also this year, Arteta's been much more willing to release one of the back three. And so they've been much more, because they've been so good defensively, Saliba and Gabriel, they've gone into a two there, which means that Calafiori can get released up here. It means that you've still got Trossard to go in here, Rice crashes the box, Zubimendi comes in, and now he's freeing up Timber or White that side as well. So if Timber or White get up into this position here, obviously the winger's going to come back, then Saka goes roaming. He can go that way or that way, and as you say, that much more three-dimensional attack that Arsenal have been creating this season is why they're top of the league.
Overloads absolutely everywhere. Yes. I think that's Arsenal's competitive advantage this season. The international break did bring some questions for Arsenal. Much has been made about their depth, but they're missing a key man, and that leads us into our second question. With Gabriel injured, should Arsenal be more solid with Miles Lewis-Skelly over Calafiori?
Another Arsenal injury question, eh, Quaker? Look, it's a really good question, actually. It's very, very good. Arsenal fans will be breathing a sigh of relief that Calafiori's injury from international break is not as bad as they feared. But this is a genuine, really good question for Arteta in this game. And there's one reason for that, and thanks again for the questions. I think perhaps this is what this person is getting at, is because of this player here for Spurs, and that's Kudus. So Mohamed Kudus, however Spurs' shape ends up, he is the outlet and he is the outball. In the Super Cup at the start of the season when they played against PSG, he played almost as a second striker up with Richarlison, and he held the ball up better than most strikers do. And then if he holds the wide position, he is the one where they play the ball into his feet, he tries and attracts a winger, a fullback to him, and he can either beat him up the line or play inside. He is the outball. So if you get to a position, Arsenal, where Calafiori does bomb on into that position, Rice is pushing forward, as we said before, we get into this attacking shape, Spurs may try and leave, if they're brave enough, leave Kudus in a position, especially without Gabriel, where it's a bit like, this is the danger zone. So can they do that, Spurs? Can they be brave enough? So I think that this question is getting at, if you play Miles Lewis-Skelly instead of Calafiori, then probably what happens is Miles Lewis-Skelly goes man for man on Kudus, and then you have Hincapié or Mosquera as the spare man. Saliba will take care of Richarlison, and then you can attack your right side much better. And not sacrifice an attacking player, because Miles Lewis-Skelly's outstanding as well, but in duels, man v man, and in his pitch position, it might be that if they do, obviously Ezra's going to go forward, Rice is going to go forward, Trossard goes forward. If they end up in a 2-3-5 shape, Arsenal, like that, then it's Miles Lewis-Skelly who will invert slightly but pick up Kudus. So that's definitely a possibility. Personally, again, Tottenham hat off, just being as clean as I can be with tactics, I think that would be a mistake, because I think that Tottenham then will be able to get that man v man system without the overloads we were talking about in the previous section, and that the risk for Arsenal should be we can comfortably defend against Kudus with our left centre-back. Perhaps they favour Hincapié there over Mosquera, because if it's Saliba and Hincapié, who is naturally left-sided, then you free up Calafiori to go forwards, and you say to your centre-back, just do the same job that Gabriel would do. Trust him to do that role.
And we know Arteta, he favours playing a right centre-back who's right-footed and a left centre-back who is left-footed. If we just isolate it, we take away the Miles Lewis-Skelly aspect of it and just talk about the loss of Gabriel, what does that mean for Arsenal on and off the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's more of a presence thing, I think. Like when they get a corner, and we've talked about the set pieces, and we'll come on to that in a minute, the crowd gets whipped up because they see Gabriel charging forward. Gabriel's got that fantastic big smile and presence about him that, when he makes a tackle in this area, this part of the crowd erupts and goes. And it's just this thing, the Gabriel Saliba thing, it's almost talking about Ferdinand and Vidic, and, Adams and Bold. It's becoming that huge centre-half presence. So there's no getting away from it. It is a massive, massive loss to them. And obviously their defensive record before the Sunderland game, we'd lost count. Was it 10 games without conceding a goal? 9 or 10 games without conceding a goal. So it is a big blow. But if any squad has got enough players to cope with it, it's Arsenal's.
A lot of people talk about Arsenal's depth. Just on the Miles Lewis-Skelly aspect of it, he comes inside a lot more than Calafiori, and we talked about it in the first question where Calafiori can provide that overlap for a player like Trossard or Martinelli. What do they lose with Calafiori out of the team as opposed to Miles Lewis-Skelly being in there?
Yeah, I think you pick players in pairs almost in those positions, and we know how well White and Saka played together as a pair, and now Timber's doing the same thing on the right-hand side. But if you do end up in that 2-3-5 shape where Miles Lewis-Skelly comes in as a sort of inverted fullback, and remember, both these managers love the phrase rest defence. So that means if you end up in that shape there, then and the Reds are attacking, Arsenal are attacking, that still means if you lose the ball, you've got a 5v3 in that position, yeah? So your rest defence is in the right position. Yeah. But if you play Miles Lewis-Skelly there, to answer your question, I think they'd favour an actual Noni Madueke, a Martinelli, someone who's going to hug the wing, because they'll provide the width, which again opens up these lanes to go through. If you have Miles Lewis-Skelly and a Trossard wants to come inside. And so then you end up with a bit of a traffic jam here without the width. So if that's Calafiori, you get Calafiori go there, you get Rice drop in, you get Trossard come inside, you've got those lanes opened up again. So I think if it's Miles Lewis-Skelly, it becomes a winger who plays out there instead.
You talked about Spurs' bravery. Will Thomas Frank be brave? And that does lead us into our question number 3. Will Thomas Frank just park the bus and turn it into the set-piece derby? Right smile on your face, Dino.
Not the North London derby, the set-piece derby. Look, will Tottenham be brave? Will Frank park the bus? I think it'll be a combination of both, right? So Thomas Frank as a manager, and I watched a fantastic video of him and how he's got to this point in his career. And when his teams are playing at their best, they are one or the other. So, and that means in the same game. So they'll either really press high up the field and try and win the ball back. So you might, in these games, if Arsenal are in their defensive shape, you might in this game see Spurs really, really press up the field from Arsenal goal kicks and really push players on. You know, and that is a brave scenario where they'll go right up like that and really push on the midfield players and be man v man here, man v man here, man v man here, here and here, and really try and win the ball. They did that against Manchester City away.
Yes.
And everyone was really shocked at how they left Haaland 1v1 with Romero or Van der Ven. They pushed the centre-backs right onto the midfielders. So don't be surprised if you see that shape when Arsenal have got a goal kick. But what you then expect Raya to do is go over the top of it and not play out. But then Spurs can drop in. So it's either they'll press high or they'll accept they've lost the ball and then they'll drop into that 4-5-1 shape. So that's very, very pragmatic, but then the decision making in a game of whether you're going to press or whether you're going to drop. I also think there's a scenario in this game where Kevin Danso could play, which then changes Tottenham formation to a back five. So if that's a back five, and I think this is what the question's referring to of parking the bus, you could see Porro, Romero, Danso, Van der Ven, and then Udogie or Spence. Personally, I think it might be Jed Spence because he's very good on his right side. So if Saka's cutting in, he then comes against that. And then if you have Palhinha and Bentancur in front, you could end up with, it will be Richarlison up front, I would imagine. You could then end up with Kudus and Xavi Simons playing much closer to Richarlison, and then them saying, well, if Arsenal do come on to us in their 5 or 6 man attacking shape, like that, then we could end up with a 3v3 going the other way.
How integral is it for the ball to stick to Richarlison or maybe even Kudus, who might play alongside Richarlison? How important is it for the ball to stick to them, so maybe the wing backs or Xavi Simons can come into play and move Spurs up the pitch?
Yeah, absolutely right. Spot on. And Kudus is very, very good at that. I think there can be a criticism of Richarlison a lot of the time that doesn't happen with him. However, and this is hard for me to say because he's such a Rolls Royce of a player, but if Saliba has one weakness, it's that high ball and that high diagonal ball. And so Spurs love switching play. And Thomas Frank is a big believer in that play gets sucked into this position here. Can you get it out this side? And if you get a Xavi Simons in this position here and Richarlison battling for that loose ball. We saw it against Manchester City where it was actually Kudus who won that ball and then Richarlison ran behind, okay? And if it happens in this space here, can you then get Xavi Simons away and then the wing-back running up the other side? So, yeah, absolutely pivotal that they battle for that first ball and then that second ball in possession. But I think they'll try and target Saliba a little bit. And they did it against Manchester United, but they had the advantage of having Kolo Muani and Richarlison in aerial threats. In this game, they've only got Richarlison without Kolo Muani. But yeah, at some point in the game, I can see that Spurs shift to a 5 at the back. They may start that way, they might change that way. And then, the set pieces. We all know Arsenal, top of the league for set pieces scored, well up the league for set pieces conceded, as in the fewest conceded. But Spurs are up there as well now. So we all know about the long throws. Another reason to play Danso in the back 5 is his long throw. Potentially Lucas Bergvall can play in midfield because he's got a long throw as well. And Declan Rice's delivery, Bukayo Saka's delivery. We're going to see a lot of box action in this game.
I think one of Spurs' most impressive performances this season came in Thomas Frank's first competitive game, the Super Cup against PSG. Will he be looking for a carbon copy of that performance? I know the Spurs didn't end up winning that game, but it was really impressive.
They should have won that game, yeah. And that's a really good question because, again, Arsenal played Bayern Munich in the week in the Champions League, and Spurs play PSG again. So it could be that Frank goes to this 5-2-3 or 5-3-2 shape against Arsenal because he could then replicate that again against PSG. And what they did in that game that was a problem, they didn't quite get it right, Spurs, is they won a lot of the ball against PSG in these areas here. And when the ball went up to Kudus or Richarlison, they failed to get the extra man into the position to support. So the number of times they broke and they ended up in sort of this isolated position here and they didn't get another midfielder up to support. That's where perhaps a Pat Matar or Bergvall might be the preferred player in that midfield position with the legs to go and join the attack. But yeah, both managers are going to keep us guessing here, I think. But It's quite an intriguing game because, look, Arsenal are heavy favourites.
Of course.
Heavy favourites. And although I think Spurs will be a threat at set pieces, I fully expect Thomas Frank to sort of play it safe.
I agree. I think Thomas Frank is going to play it safe, and it is safer gambling week. Betfair believes that you need the right tools to bet at your best. So for safer gambling week, why not try Betfair's handy, safer gambling tools? Just like the right pair of boots, designed to keep you on top of your game. Open the Betfair app to equip yourself so you can bet at your best. So Dino, what's your prediction for the weekend? Take your Spurs hat off.
Oh, you know I don't do predictions, Baker. Look, I think it's going to be very difficult for Spurs. Very, very difficult. I think that physically Arsenal are very dominating, but the good sign from the Sunderland game for Spurs to take is that Sunderland showed that with a Xhaka in midfield and the physicality that Sunderland showed, you can match Arsenal. So expect a big physical Spurs lineup, but I still think Arsenal probably win this 2-1, 3-1.
Okay, 2-1, 3-1 is Dino's prediction. He's sitting on the fence, not really giving us a definitive prediction. We'll see if he's right. Make sure you log back into the Sun Sports YouTube channel for Tactics Exposed on Monday for a review of the biggest game of the weekend.